Hello and welcome to Your Hometown Solutions. I'm your host, Jean Newell, and in the studios with me today is my co-host, Jonathan Lack. Thanks, Jonathan, for coming into the show again today. We have every week we're putting out there the great information that our listening audience needs to know about buying, selling, renting, refinancing, everything they need to know about real estate.
Well, thanks for having me back, Gene.
And I want to do a little plug for your services because I always say you wear three hats, and they're all important hats. One hat that you wear is you're a real estate attorney for the state of Florida, and you specialize in a lot of different types of scenarios that regards to real estate, and we can talk a little bit about that. And that's with Lack and Lack Chartered. You're co-owner with your father from Lack and Lack Chartered, and that's in Indy Atlantic. Yes, Indy Atlantic, because our office is in Melbourne Beach, is Waterview Realty. So you also are the broker-owner of Waterview Realty Services in Melbourne Beach and also Waterview Title Services. So if anyone needs to know about anything real estate, whether it's title information, real estate in general for sales and listing and buying, or perhaps they've got a situation that takes a little bit more legal information, your offices at Lack and Lack Chartered is where they need to go to get those services. So, Jonathan, tell us a little bit about your background as far as how you got started with Lack and Waterview Title. I know it started in South Florida, really, and moved up this way. But in general, what are the different services that you provide?
Well, since you said about my history, I'll give you the full history. First, I'd like to correct you. You had said that I am an attorney for the state of Florida, and I'd like to correct that too.
Right. Thank you.
I am legally qualified to practice throughout the state of Florida, but I am not the state of Florida's attorney. That would be the Attorney General.
All right, thank you.
I am an attorney in the state of Florida.
Thank you for that correction.
That's all right. The Lack and Lack Chartered actually started with Ed Lack, my father, and he's been doing real estate and title insurance for, I guess we're up to 55 years now. He started, I want to say, 1962 in Orlando, or Winter Park, and then from 62 to 68, he worked for Attorney's Title Insurance Fund, which is an underwriter. Then he moved on to another company in South Florida, which is when me and my family moved down to the South Florida area, and that's where I grew up. And then Dad opened up a title insurance agency in South Florida back in 1979, and practiced real estate and title insurance law for the entire time until now, and still practicing with me. I joined the firm in 87, and we actually formed Lack and Lack Chartered in 1990 or 91, and we've been practicing together ever since. Waterview Title Services is the title company we opened when we moved up to the Brevard County area. And Gene, you and I will talk about this migration from South Florida to Central Florida shortly, but when we moved up to Central Florida or Brevard County area, we opened Waterview Title Services, and then just a few years ago, we've expanded our services to include Waterview Realty Services, which is a full-service real estate brokerage located in Melbourne Beach, but with offices in Pompano Beach and doing business throughout the state of Florida.
You know, Jonathan, I think a lot of people are still confused what a title company does, and that a lawyer, that practicing real estate attorney, could close real estate. They don't necessarily, they do the same type of search for the property to see if it's in good standing and so forth. There's no liens against it. So you can do something under the guise of your law office in title search as well as Waterview Title. So maybe a little explanation on what a title company or a lawyer actually does to close a transaction.
Well, that's a great point. A title insurance agency, or there are title insurance companies, for example, we write our policies on First American Title Insurance Company. They're the underwriter. They're the deep pocket. If there's a insurance claim, your claim is actually going to be against the title insurance company. But the companies have agencies, and Waterview Title Services is an agent of First American, and we issue the policies. What the title insurance agency does is we are basically the hub of a real estate transaction. The realtors assist you with putting buyers and sellers together. So they help a buyer find a property, they help a seller sell a property. But once the realtors have put the two parties together, other than the many value-added services of us holding their clients' hands, that's pretty much what their legal job is to do. Then they turn it over to a title company, title agency, that handles the closing of the loan. And that title agency will communicate with the realtors, with the buyers, with the sellers, with the lenders, with all of the parties to pull the transaction together, and the closing will usually take place at the title insurance agency. The primary job of the title insurance agency is to insure the title, to ensure the buyer that what they are buying is what they are expecting to buy, that they will own the property free and clear of any liens from the seller. Now, of course, if they get a mortgage on the property, that will be there. I always say that the purpose of title insurance is twofold. One is to ensure that there are no liens or judgments or tax is due or anything that could come out of the woodwork from the seller that could affect the buyer after the closing. And the other is to educate the buyer as to the status of the title, because there are some matters such as easements for utilities, and if you have a mortgage on the property, or if you're in a subdivision with restrictions, you can't paint your house purple or things like that, or condominiums where you have other restrictions. Those things are all disclosed to you. They're not insured over because you're subject to them under your ownership, but they're disclosed to you. So you're insured that you own the property free and clear of any liens, and you're also educated as to those matters that might otherwise affect you. Attorneys can be title agents. So attorney's title insurance fund was the original attorney's title, and that was to allow attorneys to write policies, but that is now a universal thing. So attorneys can be title agents. They just have to be appointed by an underwriter, such as First American, or many of us attorneys have opened title insurance companies or agencies separately, such that we operate. I have the law office of Lack and Lack Chartered, who can write title insurance policies, or Waterview Title Services, who can write title insurance policies.
The reason I bring this up is we have a lot of clients that come from another state, and will predominantly like New Jersey or New York, where they always have to close with a lawyer, and they don't have title companies up there. So it's always confusing to them why there's a title company. They always want to feel like there should be a lawyer involved, which can be. They can always ask for your services. But basically, while I explain it, and I know you'll correct me if I'm wrong, Jonathan, you really provide three different services. One, you're a researcher, and you go, and you used to have to go actually to the courthouse and look through all the documents. Of course, we can do a lot of that online now, but you're researching the history of the property to make sure that everything has been done correctly in the past, and that doesn't look like there's any problems with the actual title. And also you're researching and finding out about liens and so forth like that, because that shows up on the at the courthouse, and right. Which is another kind of sidebar, is that a lot of people never find out there's a lien on their property till they get ready to sell it, and I've never understood why, if a company's going to put a lien on your property, why the county or the city doesn't automatically send you notice that there's a lien on your property, because most people don't ever know. They don't know until it comes time to sell.
Right. Well, the reality is, typically you will have gotten some form of notice, but many clients either disregard the notice or don't open it, don't read it, don't recognize it for what it is. So most liens do require some form of notice. However, you're absolutely right. Many of my clients come to me and I tell them, I'm sorry, you have a lien against the property, and they're flabbergasted when in fact they probably did get notice somewhere along the way but didn't realize what was happening.
And a lot of people don't realize anyone can put a lien on your property if it's an unpaid doctor's bill. It doesn't have to necessarily be work done on your property. Anyone can put a lien against your property.
Just to clarify.
Thank you.
There are a variety of different matters that could constitute a lien against a property, and there are a lot of different protections. So, for example, the homestead, if your property is homesteaded, such that is your primary principal residence, there are protections against liens being assessed against your homestead, or I should rephrase, to being enforced against your homestead. You can't just, and not anybody can put a lien. Anybody can record anything, but that's valid. To get a lien against a property, for example, if you're doing work on the property, there's very strict statute. It's Florida statute Chapter 713 provides for mechanics liens and such. So if somebody's put a roof on your property or done your pool or things of that nature, they are entitled to a lien, provided they follow this strict statutory procedure. But you brought up a doctor bill or Visa card or things like that. In order for them to get a lien on your property, they're going to have to actually get a judgment against you in a court of law. Now, again, this is where people ignoring situations can bite them, because a lot of people will get noticed and get served and ignore it, and they'll get a default against them, meaning they never filed an answer in court, and they can end up with a judgment that 15 years later they forgot how that happened. They probably did get served 15 years ago, they just don't recall it. But in order for it to be a lien against a property, they have to go to court and get a judgment in that scenario. So it's not simply a doctor saying, you didn't pay your bill, I'm filing a lien against your property. There is a little bit more to it than that.
But that's one of the services that you provide, is that you're researching that property. Then when you feel, as a qualified professional, that it looks good, now that's when the insurance kicks in, that you're actually getting an insurance policy on the fact that there's a nice, clean title.
Right.
And that's where the insurance policy. So the insurance policy, we used to say most insurance policies that you're buying is for a future problem that might come up, but you're really insuring on the past.
Right. Yeah, the beauty of title insurance, and this is how it was explained to me back 30 years ago, is that if I do my job properly, I should virtually never have a claim, because as you just pointed out, I'm searching what has already happened, and I am just making sure that there is nothing that has happened that affects the property. And if I do my job well, then there should never be a claim. However, of course, sometimes either things are misrecorded, somebody else hasn't done their job properly, thus preventing me from finding it, or there might be a forgery. So I will look and I'll see properly witnessed, notarized, recorded deeds, and I'll assume everything is okay. And it turns out that that was a forgery. And the title insurance does insure you against that. So the example I always give is the owners of the property are off in Europe having an extended stay for 2 or 3 years. Somebody sees that that's the case and they jump on it. They record a fraudulent deed from the owners who are off in Europe, and then they turn around and sell the property to a third party, and they create a couple of layers there, and then we insure that transaction, and it turns out that people come back from Europe and say, who are you and what are you doing in my house? And that, of course, creates a title claim and has to be resolved. But if the purchaser purchased title insurance, then at least they'll have the defense of an underwriter to take care of it, and typically the underwriter would try to resolve the matter. Otherwise, that worst case scenario, and again, this rarely happens, but the worst case scenario, the buyer of the title insurance would be reimbursed for their expenses. So again, we don't like that as a result, but that is the benefit of the insurance. Is really the main benefit is the legal defense that is offered.
Let me give you an example of something that happened, and then you can tell our listening audience how that would be resolved. And I've heard of this happening not just one time, but several times. And it happens usually in a big community where the description of the property is a little complicated. And the one that comes to mind is one that happened in Palm Bay, where they're selling lots, and they've got a lot, a block, and sometimes the numbers or the letters can get reversed. And next thing you know, a vacant lot owned by Mr. and Mrs. Jones has been built on by the Smith builders, and they got their confusion on the lot. So now there's a new house built on Mr. and Mrs. Jones' lot who is living somewhere else, and they come down to look at their lot sometime, and there's a house sitting on it.
Yeah, that would be an awful scenario for both parties, probably more for the Smiths than the Joneses, because the Joneses got a house on their property. But yeah, that would be one of those scenarios. In doing our job as a title insurance agency and in getting through to the closing, one of the things that is not legally required, but something that we highly recommend and essentially require is a survey of the property. So we make sure that there is a survey done. So if we were working with a vacant lot and the surveyor goes out there and surveys it and shows me a house, there's immediately an issue there. Or vice versa. If I expected to be buying a house and the surveyor shows me a vacant lot, then again, it's going to raise that kind of red flag. So the scenario you brought up, again, the reason we have title insurance is to protect against these oddball situations.